friends, I'm Alexandra Soes, and this is the Freya top by Tilly and the Buttons. If you want to see how I made it, just keep on watching. This pattern is in the book Tilly and the Buttons Stretch. That is, as far as I know, the only way you can get this pattern. And I totally bought this entire book just for this pattern. I really wanted a great turtleneck. I really like the way that turtlenecks look on me. One thing I like to do when I'm making a new pattern by a designer that I have made a pattern from before is that I like to get those patterns out. So like I got the Agnes pattern out and compare the measurements and see if I know how the one that I've made fits and what size I made it, so that way I can go and look and see how the new pattern is going to fit if I were to make it in the same size. So I made this in size 6, which is for a 40-inch bust, a 34-inch waist, and a 43-inch hip. Now those are not my measurements. This pattern is designed to be worn with negative ease. That means it's made smaller than your body and it's designed to stretch over your body. So the finished garment measurements though, which are also listed with the pattern information, the bust is 38 inches, the waist is 33 inches, and the hip is 39 and a quarter inches. And the hip doesn't go all the way down to your hip, so it is kind of okay that it's a little smaller. For reference, my measurements are probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 37 to 38 in the bust, 31 in the waist, and in my true hip, I am around 44 inches. But again, since this doesn't go all the way down, it's okay that it's a little smaller. Also, I don't really mind a little bit of negative ease in the hip because that means this is going to be easier to tuck in. I really like to tuck my tops into my skirts and my pants, especially things that I'm wearing to work, so this is good for me. One other thing that I really love about this pattern, and the Agnes pattern as well, both the Agnes and the Freya have this really great shaping. As you could probably tell from my measurements, I am a definite pear, which means that my hips are bigger than my bust and my waist, so I'm shaped kind of like that. And so this here, you can see, is shaped like that. So I'll show you some pictures of this flat so that you can see. Both of these, in my opinion, are the perfect t-shirt pattern for pears. I think they look really good. They're really great to tuck in. So I would highly recommend this pattern if you are shaped like me. So in this video, I will take you through how I made this top, and I'll show you a bunch of footage of that. And I'll also put it on with the pants that I have that I want to wear it with, and show you some pictures of what it looks like when I'm wearing it. So if you want to see how I made this, just keep on watching.
The first thing that I'm doing is tracing the pattern. Unlike when you get a pattern from an envelope, if you've never worked with a pattern from a book or a magazine before, you frequently just get a piece of paper that has pattern pieces overlaid on top of each other. And so this one was a little bit this way, where there were a couple pieces that were overlaid on top of each other, and they're printed on both sides of the paper. So you don't want to cut it out if there's a chance that you might want to make some of the other patterns from the book. And I might want to make some of the other patterns from the book. Some of them are very cute. So I'm just using plain old tracing paper here, and I've sped this up so that it doesn't take quite as long, but I'm using plain old tracing paper here. I ordered it from Amazon, and I can include a link in the description box, and I've put pattern weights on it to hold the paper in place so that I don't have it shifting around on top of the thing I'm trying to trace. So I'm cutting out individual pieces here and trying to label them. You want to make sure that you label all of the pieces you're tracing with the grain line. That is my cat Georgie jumping up to say hi. And I decided to play with her for a sec with a piece of paper I had cut off. But you want to make sure that you are labeling your pieces very carefully, the same way a pattern piece would be labeled in a printed pattern, just so that you know how many to cut, whether you're cutting on the fold, what the grain lines are, where the stretch is supposed to be, etc. I like to cut my pattern pieces out as I'm going, and I cut my pattern pieces with my rotary cutter. I know that some people think that this dulls the blade, but I don't really notice that it's any significant problem. I generally change my rotary blade after about every couple projects, depending on the size of the project. You can see my dog Lyra outside there. She was barking at something, I think. Anyway, after I have cut out all of the pieces, I take a device called a pattern notcher. It kind of looks like a single hole hand hole punch. And I use that to mark the notches where indicated. Now I've got my fabric, and this is a really lovely black tencel and organic cotton jersey from Blackbird Fabrics. I will link them in the description box below. If you've never ordered from them, they're really great. It's a Canadian company, but you don't have to pay international shipping. Their fabrics tend to be really high quality, so I order from them a lot. And I made a pretty big order in the beginning of the year of basic fabrics, so solid color jerseys and things like that. So you'll probably see a lot of fabrics from them in my first few videos. So I am cutting this out, and this process took just a little bit longer than it might normally with this particular fabric, just because it's pretty slinky. So I had to keep smoothing it out with my hands to make sure that it wasn't getting bunched up. And as I finish cutting those, I'm placing the pieces with the tissue on top on my ironing board, which you can't see out of the left of the frame. But I keep the tissue on top of the cut pieces because it helps you figure out which side is the front. You don't lose track of which piece is which. Now I'm threading up my serger with black thread. I like to thread all of the machines that I'm going to use, and I threaded up my regular straight stitch sewing machine off camera, but I like to thread up all of my machines when I can before I start. I am testing the tension here, so I've got a scrap of fabric. I've doubled it over so that it's the same thickness as what I'm going to be putting through the serger, and I'm just testing it out. Next, I've got clear elastic, and I'm going to zigzag stitch the clear elastic to the back of the shirt on the shoulder seams. And I do this at about 5/8 inch in so that when I serge the shoulders, I'll still have some of that elastic left, and that helps stabilize what I've got there. So you can see me doing the first shoulder there. I did the second off camera, and now I am running that through the serger at the shoulder so that that seam will be finished and sewed all in one. And I do not typically take my serger threads and tie them off in any way. With this, I'm going to go around it, but I never really find that to be a problem. I know some people like to do that. Here I am preparing the neckline. I'm sewing the edges together, and now I'm going to iron it, push the seam to one side, iron that, and I'm going to fold it in half. I'm not really using a lot of heat here. I'm just kind of giving it a little bit so that it will hold its shape, and kind of give me a little bit of a guide to where it's folded. Here you can see it looks a little bit like a headband. And now I am pinning it to the neckline. So I have already sewn the shoulders together as you saw earlier, and I'm pinning that. It's going to need to stretch a little bit. The neckband is a little bit smaller than the neck hole. And I had a little bit of trouble with this, again, because this fabric is so slinky. I had a little trouble getting it like really, really nice and flat. So I had to unpick little bits of it a couple times and sew it together. But I didn't record all of that just because I thought it was kind of boring. Okay, so now we've got the sleeves. So the sleeves go in flat, which is really, really nice. That makes it very easy to get them in, which means that you put the sleeves in before you sew up the side seams. So I'm going to pin them. I'm going to take them over to the regular sewing machine and baste them in, and then I'm going to go over that with my serger. I'm just going to do one sleeve on camera, and then I will do the same on the other side. So we're taking a quick cat break, and then we are going to hem the shirt. So off camera, I added the second sleeve, like I said, and then I just zipped up the side seams with my serger, and I didn't seem to have any footage of that, so I apologize there. So here I am threading up my cover stitch machine. I thought that I was going to have to move my black thread over from my serger to my cover stitch machine, and then I discovered that I had a couple unopened spools of black serger thread. So now I can have both of them all threaded up at the same time. So after I got the machine threaded up, I found the black piece of fabric that I had used to test the tension on my serger, and now I'm using it to test the tension on my cover stitch machine. And as you can see here, I was happy with the result. It looked pretty good. So the cover stitch machine, if you're not familiar, does 2 lines of stitching on the top, and on the bottom it kind of looks a little bit like serging, but if you have a ready-to-wear t-shirt, you will probably see that finish on the hems, on the sleeves, and on the bottom. And so I have one of these machines, and I love to use it to hem my shirts. So here are some flat shots of the finished shirt. You can see I'm pointing to the shaping I was talking about earlier, and here you can see what the cover stitch machine does. It's hard to see black on black, but there's 2 lines of stitching on the top, and on the bottom you can see that that is a stretch stitch. So here is a sleeve hem you can see as well. Here's some shots of the inside. This is where you can see the serging at the neckline, and you can see the shoulder seams. I just thought you guys might like to see some inside shots of this shirt. And here you can see on the left, that is serging, and on the right is what the inside of the cover stitch looks like. And here's the finished shirt worn. I think seeing the footage of this worn kind of makes me think that I might give myself a little more room in the shoulders next time, because this has a high neckline and I can see that it's kind of stretching out. But overall, I really like this shirt and I'll wear it a lot. Thanks for watching.